Hello YouTube Pipe community, OTC Piper here with another addition to my Contemplations series. This one is later than I wanted to get it put out, just with the planning of the new show, and the closer we get, the more exciting things get, and the anticipation for me is kind of amounting. But that's no excuse. Just kind of letting you know, well, the reason that is. This Contemplations video, when I've talked about in other videos, that it, as it was coming up, is going to be titled "To Thine Own Self Be True." That's a literary quote from Hamlet, and I've given the content of what I wanted to go over today. I felt like that was fitting. Before we do that, we'll go over my pairings of the morning. Sir Walter, Old Pipe, Earl Grey. Let me get a little cup poured. I love Earl Grey tea. Get this lit and we'll get started. One more. Very good. The passage that line comes from reads like this: "This above all, to thine own self be true. And it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." In this discussion, while I enjoy this pipe and cup of Earl Grey tea, is to shed some light on the importance of being fulfilled in what you do. Too commonly do people live in a box, succumbing to the expectations of mediocrity. The existence is then perpetuated by the struggle to break even day to day. It's a sad thing and a lonely place to be. And I've spent too much of my life in that place. And I come to realize that a while ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And I've enjoyed the journey, through those times, and getting back to where I should be. The journey makes it that much greater. For me, this is about music, which is a big part of who I am. In fact, it is the core of who I am. Before I am anything else. I've been a musician since I was a child. And, that's led down a very interesting path. And there's some pitfalls that I wish I had not, had to go through. But through all of that, many blessings have come along, and I'm glad for that journey. For other people, it's, other things. Everybody, is their own person, but you got to be that person. You can't be somebody else. You can't be who society wants you to be. You've got to be who you are. And I found too much dissatisfaction in trying to be somebody else. At 9 years old, I started taking guitar lessons. It was a summer thing that I did. And for a few years, I didn't really grow much. I just kind of, played the songs out of the book and didn't really do much because I didn't have anything to really latch on to. And when I was 13 years old, I happened upon a recorded from TV on the VHS, if you remember those. A Simon and Garfunkel concert in Central Park, 1981. It was a very outstanding performance. And when I was a kid, I was spending the weekend with my father at the time, and didn't really want to watch this, but we came across it and he wanted to watch it to just see if it was all on there. And as a kid, you know, early teenager, didn't really know anything about it. I kind of protested, you know, we wound up watching it, and after the first song, which was Mrs. Robinson, on that concert, I gravitated to it in a way that I can't explain. And we wound up watching that entire concert. And Mrs. Robinson's a well-known song. I know I've heard it, you know, several times on the radio. I just didn't think anything of it until I watched it during that performance, and I just latched onto it, and it became something that I could latch onto musically. And it was odd that a 13-year-old, you know, in that time would be interested in something like that. Just, you know, it was way before my time, but as I say in many times, I am an old soul, and you know, looking back now, it's no wonder to me. But that was the time when I was starting to outgrow my beginner's guitar, and I don't even know, don't even remember it much. But at that point, you know, my mother was a single mom, raising me on just one income, and you know, me and my you know, sister. This is before she, right before she married, you know, my stepfather, Catholic pipe setter's father, and we became a blended family. But she wasn't able to afford that. So I reached out to my grandmother and said, hey, you know, I know I got, it was whatever holiday or birthday coming up, I don't know. I said, I really want to get a guitar because I want to keep playing, and I want to, you know, get better and all that. So I did. And this is the guitar. This guitar is the one that's always in the background of my videos. It stays out here in my pipe nook. And it's the one I learned on, and I'm gonna, you know, keep it forever. You know, it reminds me of the wonder that I experienced as a young man. And getting into some of the darker times, there's a song that they did, and I'm going to play just a little bit of it. I won't keep you too long. Won't be doing any singing or anything like that, but it's the somber tone and the content is very reminiscent to me of how I felt during those dry times when I kind of abandoned who I was as a musician. And it goes like this. That was called Dangling Conversation. And it was about a couple that had grown apart, and they had become just complacent of each other. And that's, looking back now, that's kind of the way I felt about, my time as a musician for way too many years. So going back to being 13, my entire life was absorbed by playing guitar. I would spend hours a day learning and teaching myself to play, playing along with. This is back before you could Google the tabs. I would pause the video so I could see what kind of chords Paul Simon was playing, and so I can kind of map it out for myself. I look back at that and I was thinking, man, those were great days. Because there wasn't any kind of digital information at your fingertips back then. You just kind of had to tread your own way. And so I taught myself how to play during the time that I wasn't eating, sleeping, or going to school. And by 15, unfortunately, being an old soul gets kind of lonely. I began to seek out peer acceptance, and basically sold out for rock of that time, which was a lot of alternative and grunge and things like that, whatever was popular. And just because I wanted to be accepted, so in doing so, I forsook my own desires. I'm going to get a relight real quick, if you'll bear with me. So, I started at that point drinking from a shallow well, if you will. Amusement passed as fulfillment. So there were always new guitars, new amps, new gadgets. And, that's what kind of kept me going. Let me fix my autofocus. There we go. A little bit. Sorry about that, guys. That's what kept me going. Always trying to get the next new thing. And I didn't realize that through all that time, I was seeking fulfillment in something that was unfulfilling to me. And every new guitar, amp, or gadget brought a little spark of life to a dying flame. So this would see me through college and into early adulthood. In my time with praise and worship, me and my wife currently lead praise and worship, and it led me to a brief period of almost constant breakdown until I just realized the shallow well has run dry, and I was quite grieved during that time. So I kind of went scorched earth on my whole philosophy, as far as being a musician, and I sold all of my guitars, amps, gadgets, and took to acoustic again, which is where I should have stayed, and to the folky singer-songwriter stuff. And not to say there's anything wrong with rock and grunge and alternative, from those days and stuff that's out now. It's just not who I was. And I tried to fit myself into that mold, and it just didn't work. So I had to forsake everything that was artificial and get back to my roots, back to where I belong. Started writing again. I tried to write, because I've always been interested in songwriting, and I tried to write during those, the lost years, I guess you would say. It never really amounted to much, and I cannot even remember, a single line that I've written in the past during those times, and all for the best, I guess. But I did, I started to write again, and this time it was personal for me. It was something I'm writing out of my own soul, out of my own experiences for that. So I keep this guitar, and it's the one that I write a lot with, because I sit out here in my pipe nook. It's not gonna work. I sit out here in my pipe nook. A lot of times I'll do some writing, and just playing, learning new stuff. And I keep this one out here for that reason, because it just reminds me of the boy that was filled with such wonder, and to remind me that I need to remember those things as I go forward as a musician. So in all of this, the joy has returned, and the pure acceptance immediately when all that happened. The pure acceptance returned back to the levels of my adolescence. And immediately, almost immediately, I noticed a change in that. And I was known as the rock guy. If you needed rock for this song or that, I was the guy to go to, and all that. And just because you may be able to do something well doesn't mean you necessarily need to do it if that's not who you are. And I just realized that the value in my joy outweighs the cost. And that's what I wanted to leave you with in this contemplation series is when it comes to your own fulfillment, the joy in that certainly outweighs the cost by far. So in that, I'm going to revisit this passage, and just in closing, from Hamlet. It says, "This above all to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man," and you can't be false to yourself either. So I just wanted to encourage everybody in that whatever you do, it doesn't have to be about music. That's just what it is for me. But you got to be fulfilled, and you got to do what's true to yourself, or you're never going to find happiness and joy. So just wanted to leave you with that. OTC Piper wishing everybody all the best. Here's to Contemplations. A good warm pipe.